Hello everyone, Valeria is starting. It's just that her reaction is a little slow.
Greetings, comrades. Today we're going to talk about the most powerful rejuvenation methods from our practice, about which methods actually work, and that is exactly what we'll be discussing today. I've put together quite a few points that we're going to go through, 21 points to be exact. So let's start with the very first one. And that, of course, is eating less and not seeking pleasure from food. Because when a person overeats, it creates a certain unhealthy state and overloads the organs. Foods that shouldn't be mixed get mixed together, which leads to putrefaction and fermentation, brain fog, lack of energy, and the growth of bacterial microflora. The body is working at full capacity, and the brain doesn't receive enough electrical energy. All that energy is being consumed by the gastrointestinal tract. As a result, the body wears out faster. What do you think about this, Dimitri? And have you had any examples in your own life that illustrate this pathological condition?
Are we seriously going to discuss what bad things to say about Maloder?
Yes, seriously. Share yours, share your arguments, and let's discuss this topic. If you think this method is ineffective, I put it first because, in my opinion, it's the most effective.
Well, yes, you only have to look at Valeria and then look at people who eat 3 or 5 times a day. That in itself is already somewhat beyond reason. But even what is called a normal balanced diet, where meals are distributed throughout the day according to a certain schedule, when a person is expected to have breakfast while still barely awake, go to work, eat a fairly substantial lunch, and then have another meal in the evening with alcohol and top it all off with dessert, I don't think we can seriously discuss whether that is healthy or unhealthy. Food. A person who is genuinely absorbed in their work, absorbed in life, science, research, or whatever they are passionate about, may simply forget about dinner sometimes. In the evening, they might indeed eat something modest, but they are not going to eat 3 times a day just for the sake of it. Although, yes, we did sometimes have lunches with business partners. In that context, it was an element of negotiations. Perhaps it had some significance, partly ritual or even symbolic, and partly because business matters were actually discussed. When you break bread with someone, it creates a greater sense of trust. But overall, if we're talking about a normal, balanced daily routine, it should not necessarily include the so-called traditional approaches to meal frequency and eating schedules. Valeria, I think I've answered the question quite thoroughly.
Yes, now I want to answer the question myself. I'll put it more bluntly, it's devilry. Why? Now, use your logic and think about it. When we celebrate a birthday, there's this whole obsession with food. When you meet a guy for the first time, you would think that a normal person wouldn't want to sit there chewing in front of him like a monkey. But no, even I could never bring myself to start eating in front of a guy. I've always been amazed by these women who go on dates just to get a free meal. Funerals involve food too. We celebrate something at work. Again, food. What kind of ritual is this? Why is food everywhere? Dimitri, explain it to me. Maybe you understand why there's food absolutely everywhere. Why is there this constant need to stuff ourselves?
Maybe I'm just not that particular about it. I can eat around people I trust, but overall, yes, I don't make a cult out of food. Again, to use that old literary phrase, I genuinely don't consider food to be something we should worship or revere. In fact, even now, we're probably giving food too much importance simply by discussing it so much. It almost makes it seem as though food is life itself. It may be an area of your research, an area of your interests, and an area where you apply the knowledge you share. But even discussing it in such detail already amounts to some extent to elevating this particular aspect of existence, and there are countless such aspects. Food is just one of them. Those who make it the central one, yes, well, it becomes a kind of recursion.
Because, in fact, if a person eats more, their body expends an unjustifiably large amount of ATP processing that food, and by the age of 25, they are already running a serious energy deficit. ATP, just as a reminder, is essentially the body's energy currency, energy that could otherwise be used by the brain for generating ideas, for personal development, or simply for being active. A person can barely get out of bed after breakfast or lunch. They have brain fog and don't feel like doing anything. Do you see what I mean? We spend an unreasonable amount of our lives endlessly washing dishes, cooking, and so on, when all of that could be significantly reduced. Dmitry, now I'd like to ask for your opinion. Look, I've been eating once a day for the past 15 years. How many years have you been eating this way as well? Tell me.
Well, for a shorter period, and to be honest, I do occasionally lose control, but rarely. And yes, let's say I've been somewhat less disciplined about it than Valeria. I don't have that kind of classical ancient Greek stoic willpower, but I do try. So there have been some breaks, but I return to it virtually every year. I mean, throughout the year I keep making these attempts, and I'm basically trying to get myself back into that routine.
So you only started eating once a day this year?
No, last year and the year before as well. When I say every year, I mean year after year. But seriously, what matters is how frequently I have periods when I actually stick to it without slipping. Those periods are becoming more and more frequent. In other words, I'm improving every year.
You see, I simply noticed that when I started eating much less, I had a lot more energy and much better cognitive communication between my neurons. Overall, I also noticed that my body began to undergo a stronger reversal process, and I can say that I arrived at this entirely empirically. I used to eat at around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I noticed that whenever I eat, my energy disappears. I immediately feel like going on YouTube and watching some videos. I lose my motivation to work, and I noticed that as long as I haven't eaten, I work well. As soon as I eat, that's it. I'm no longer productive. So, purely for the sake of work, I adopted this kind of self-discipline. I only eat once I've finished working. We'll share more about that.
This is, of course, a rather intimate detail, but Valeria didn't eat, whereas I, unfortunately, did eat after coming home. And considering that I've been sleep-deprived for the past 2 days, yes, it's actually 11:36. Well, you can't see it there. I've probably let myself down because I have a feeling I'm going to start getting sleepy in about 15 or 20 minutes. Actually, yes, that's interesting. By the way, ATP is adenosine phosphate, right? It's essentially the cell's energy source, correct? So a cell is basically like a tiny engine, or rather the mitochondrion inside it is, and the equivalent of the fuel-air mixture prepared in a carburetor would be adenosine triphosphate.
Yes, and this is why I think it's so important, because society generally assumes that that food gives you energy. But I've noticed the exact opposite, a direct correlation. As soon as I eat, that's it. No energy and no desire to work. So honestly, sometimes I even forget to eat. Of course, I'm not encouraging anyone to do the same. I'm simply sharing my own experience that energy doesn't come from there. Energy comes from somewhere else. I don't really understand where. Still, it's a good choice.
So I hope you won't forget to eat today, just in case I'm already asleep by the time you finally get around to having something. But yes, today really was a day of being on the move, with plans changing and so on, so overall, yes, it's been quite an exhausting day. All right, let's move on to the next question. What's our next one?
It's gastrointestinal cleansing. What I want to say is that Dmitry is generally the kind of person who tends to have elevated cortisol. He has insulin resistance, or rather, he used to. Perhaps he no longer does. And overall, he always had an issue with love handles and a bit of a belly, and, he just couldn't get rid of them. His face also wasn't as sharply defined and sculpted as it is now. It used to look more puffy. What does that mean? Oh, puffy. Yes.
Постная, да.
I just made myself laugh.
All right, wait a second. If this is some kind of veiled rudeness, then I can be subtly rude too. How could that possibly be considered rude when I'm simply going to ask you to explain what you mean by your words? I just couldn't stop myself. All right, fine. So we'll skip this question. Let's do it this way. Anyone who tries to be sarcastic loses the right to ask questions.
No, wait. No. This is the most important part of my program. It was only after that Dmitry became as handsome as you see him now. Dmitry, I'm seeing more and more comments asking, how did you manage to make Dmitry so handsome? And you want to skip this question? Let's talk about how Dmitry started cleansing his intestines. Dmitry.
Yes, Valeria is basically responsible for the program and for all our supplements, so to speak. Considering that we spend most of the year in the same place and are usually together, it's easier for me. I don't even have to think about how to fit all of it in. If I'm away somewhere, I pull up the protocol and try to follow it. At the same time, there are things that Valeria didn't introduce or implement for me, but that I do on my own. For example, Shank Prakshalana. I'm actually proud that I introduced it into her regular routine. I do it once a year. And then, of course, there's exercise. Valeria is the kind of person, you may find this hard to believe, who doesn't really do aerobic exercise. She doesn't run. Personally, I think that being without movement, without running, is simply not right. So I run, and I get an incredible amount of pleasure and enjoyment from it. I also swim, and I swim very fast. I've never personally encountered anyone swimming in the same pool who was faster than me. I've wanted to do this for a long time. Let's rent a pool. I want to race you. Well, I'm the best swimmer.
What nonsense. Haven't you seen how else I swim? I've been swimming longer than anyone.
Let's skip this question. Let's move on to the third one. Well, yes, a huge thank you to Valeria, because there are so many nuances you need to understand when it comes to every individual element, every supplement, every protocol, and every section of the program. She knows all of it. What's more, sometimes I don't even need to fully understand all that knowledge myself. I simply trust her.
Yes, please pay attention. There are different methods for cleansing the gastrointestinal tract. There are methods involving laxatives, suppositories, enemas, and Shank Prakshalana. All of these methods cleanse completely different sections of the intestines, completely different ones. You can't replace one with another and say, I take a laxative, so that covers everything. No. I do enemas, so that covers everything. No. I use suppositories, so that covers everything. No. I do Shank Prakshalana, so... No. Once again, no. All of these methods are necessary. You do Shank Prakshalana as well.
But even so, I mean that these other methods cannot be replaced by Shank Prakshalana. They are not interchangeable.
And it's also important to understand that if you're using ordinary suppositories, no parasites are going to come out. Do you know what a good cleanse is? It's when you actually see that parasites have come out. If you go through a cleanse and not a single parasite comes out, then what exactly was cleansed? The fact that you removed something from the intestines? Yes, but the point of the cleanse is for the parasites to come out. You have to understand that many people who have undergone cleansing protocols with other parasitologists, I ask them, did any parasites come out? They say, no. So where is the result?
Scientists, biohackers, and so on also tell me, no, there are no parasites. They exist somewhere else, just not where we live. As if they only exist somewhere high in the mountains of Africa or someplace like that, right? That's all nonsense. Valeria.
Then it's very important, you see, to understand that I'm not talking about worms now. I'll now show you which parasites I'm talking about.
Valeria has a group, yes, that's absolutely mind-blowing. Something that can really blow your mind. But I wouldn't want you to get distracted by that right now.
Just look, these aren't worms. They're fungal conglomerates that live inside people. They can grow to very large sizes.
This is exactly how some associations arise. For example, the association of the hydra or serpent with the biblical serpent, and so on. There is also St. George the Victorious, who pierces the serpent with his spear. Maybe you could create a kind of collaboration with biblical imagery, so to speak. Although you're more like a goddess from an earlier tradition, Diana the Huntress, Diana Cazadora as she's called here, hunting down all these creatures with Opisthorchis at the head of them.
After all, the most difficult parasite is Opisthorchis. It can even cause liver cancer. Opisthorchis is very dangerous. They are now found in almost all fish because the world's oceans are heavily polluted. These aren't worms. The world's oceans, this is official data. Worms. These aren't worms. We work with worms too, but these aren't worms. These are fungal conglomerates. What do they say it is? That the lining of the intestine has peeled off? Excuse me, my dears, but open your eyes. If the lining of your intestine had actually peeled off, you would have died from the pain shock. Let's start with that.
All right, for now, let's skip all this medical stuff, this rather complicated framework, so to speak. Valeria, we're talking about this from the perspective of naturopathy and natural approaches.
So, once again, I want to say that I am the creator of the parasitic theory of aging, and I maintain that humanity ages specifically because the internal organs become clogged as a result of the activity of internal fungal conglomerates. These are myxomycetes, right? So the first step is eating less, and the second is cleansing. Those are the two most important steps.
I think we should move on. And these films or layers that people get rid of within the very first weeks, Sometimes these layers absorb all the beneficial minerals, but still, yes, supplementation with dietary supplements should serve as a kind of third leg that provides stability. A three-wheeled bicycle is more stable than a two-wheeled one.
Yes, look, first we cleanse the intestines and reset the organs. This serves as the foundation. You see, it's important for everything to be absorbed properly. After all, the liver is involved in processing and absorbing nutrients. It's important to cleanse the intestines, blood and lymph, restore the liver, and cleanse the kidneys, lungs, heart, essentially the whole body. Then we support the body with dietary supplements. These include herbs, minerals, and certain vitamins. We also use what we call intracellular nutrition. These are nanopowders. In other words, the particles are extremely small, around 15 nanometers, which allows them to enter the cell easily and improve it from within. There is also the restoration of mitochondrial processes through a specific diet. What exactly interests you about this process?
No, well, this is more of a broad outline-style question where we've laid everything out as a fairly simple framework. Since we're talking about food and what I ate today, I probably won't go into that, but in principle, we could. Well, unfortunately, potatoes, starch.
Speaking of potatoes, I made the potatoes for Dimitri myself. They were baked without a drop of meat. Without a drop of oil. Starches themselves are not harmful. It's simply starch. Fungi aren't interested in it. So I allow you to eat potatoes, just not cooked in oil. Even people with insulin resistance can eat baked potatoes. The most important thing is to have them without ketchup, sour cream, mayonnaise, or any other sauces. Just plain potatoes with...
Yes, unfortunately, we can't really make that work here. You could envy people living in Germany where they sell vegan salmon, that red salty kind. Yes, if you want to make something tasty, I have memories from childhood. Of course, I wasn't vegan back then. My grandmother used to make potatoes in their skins with onions and some herbs sprinkled on top. Dill, for example. There would be oil, onion rings, and herring, so if you're in Germany, you can replace the herring with vegan redfish. They sell it in stores like Lidl and other supermarket chains. In Spain, by the way, you can find it in those chains too, but much less frequently. In Germany, perhaps every second store carries it, whereas in Spain it might be 1 out of 50, and even then, mostly in certain areas, such as central Madrid, where there's more developed fitness and wellness infrastructure and a larger vegan community. So yes, we were basically talking about foods that can remain in the diet. But since we've moved on to discussing food variety, what do you think about mono-eating, where you do the opposite and deliberately narrow down your choices and reduce the range of foods you eat?
Well, one of the rules of rejuvenation is precisely mono-eating. You should try to eat the same foods that are compatible with one another and are digested very quickly, because some foods are believed to conflict with each other. For example, combining sweet and savory foods, fatty and acidic foods, or starches and fats at the same time. According to this approach, such combinations create favorable conditions for fungi, making it easier for them to process the food. If, on the other hand, you eat only fiber and, say, some vegetables, that's great. If you eat rice and soy, that's also great. These combinations are digested quickly together. But if, for example, you eat soy-based meat with raspberry sauce, covered in oil, and some kind of nut sauce, then it all starts to ferment. Even if you've eaten very healthy foods, for example, soy or beans, and then, without waiting long enough, drink a smoothie made with banana and blueberries, you may experience fermentation, bloating, and flatulence.
Valeria, yes, there's a lot of knowledge involved, so to speak, and it takes time to digest it all. But perhaps someone listening right now is confused and thinking, have we forgotten that this world is a matrix, that it's a virtual reality? If you're a bad person, will these practices still work? Will this diet still work? What if you stole this course? What if you did something else? In other words, will it still work for dishonest people? We've all read about this.
All right. Have you ever actually seen honest people become rich, happy, and healthy, while the wealthy suffer and somehow get what's coming to them through karma? Well, just look at the president of that tricolor country. He's thriving and doing perfectly fine. I don't know, many people believe that Hitler committed suicide. Do you know that he lived to old age in Argentina? What makes you think that bad people face some kind of karmic consequences? Karma is simply a consolation for naive people. There is no such thing as karma.
Yes, I agree, but what kinds of, perhaps, quantum practices do you use to regulate this? By the way, one of the most authoritative figures in the scientific world, no, I mean specifically in quantum physics, is Semikhatov, who publishes lectures. He has a huge following, including among biochemists and biologists whose work is of interest to us. They watch his lectures, but recently he released a very hostile video criticizing quantum psychology. Basically, he was saying that psychologists, you're not a quantum psychologist, of course, but that they're misusing the term quantum and that the whole thing is nonsense. He was just sitting there. What can I compare it to? Remember when Arestovich once went on the channel of that clown? I've forgotten his name. Durnev. Yes, Durnev. And they sat there watching various things, including you, and discussing them. Someone sent it to us and we had a laugh about it. It was basically a loss of face. And Semikhatov did something similar. He went on some channel and started discussing psychology or something along those lines. It was rather silly. But quantum mysticism is just as much a construct, a popular, let's say, promotional construct, as non-quantum mysticism itself. So, do quantum practices work? They certainly do. I'll say right away, does Schrödinger's exist or not?
In superposition, it depends on what the observer wants. Look, we have a documented experiment demonstrating wave-particle duality, where, depending on the observer, particles change their position. That's it. As far as I'm concerned, that settles the question. If a person believes in it, then it will happen. Let's do a test with our viewers right now. Visualize a red car. Pause the video, go over to the window, and look outside for 1 minute. A red car will either already be outside your window or one will pull up. Then write in the comments whether you saw a red car or choose any other color. It doesn't have to be red. Pick any color you like and test it for yourself. I assure you that even if you go to the window every half hour or wherever you happen to be and choose a particular color of car, you'll see one. What other questions could there be?
All right, another question. I'll go and try it myself now too, apparently. There are several practices. I generally do this while listening to classical music. Classical music is capable of elevating us, but only as far as the boundaries of the physical world. This is the world of dense matter. Somewhere in the higher realms of this physical reality, there is already a minimal presence of spirit. The next realm is the astral plane, where there is a greater non-material component and only a very small amount of highly rarefied matter, from which these various forms or shells are said to be composed, including low-energy entities of the larva type. But classical music is essentially the only tool that is tangible, or rather audible, and that we can talk about with people who don't possess inner vision. How significant is classical music within these kinds of constructs and practices?
Well, it's very important. Classical music essentially harmonizes the geometry of the spirit. Not all classical music, of course. I would probably single out Wagner, Mozart, who else? Bach, and of course Stravinsky. So, yes, the majority of classical composers really do harmonize the geometry of the spirit. And opera as well. Most people are afraid to listen to classical music because it makes them feel uncomfortable, but it's not you who feels uncomfortable. It's your parasites. Likewise, if you're afraid to burn incense or if it makes you feel nauseous or gives you a headache, congratulations. Parasites hate essential aromas.
After cleansing, yes, I start to like what Valeria says, but there are periods of, let's say, contamination. This happened a long time ago as well, 25 years ago and so on. At times like that, Valeria could become quite irritating, so to speak, when my mind was clouded. All right, so we've covered physical music. That's quite important.
You've missed a lot here, but let's move on to the topic that interests you.
I really would go and get some rest now. There's just one thing. I was looking through the news today and there's this legal chat where someone wrote that a video by some Uncle Shurik had been removed. You know who I mean.
A guy with such unconventional views on intimate life. Do you mean him?
He makes these kinds of gestures, but at the same time, judging by his orientation, he seems to be more on the passive side, so to speak. You can kind of tell. And at the same time, yes, he seems to be interested in your life.
By the way, I noticed a long time ago that, for some reason, people of that particular orientation, and we have absolutely nothing against them. Well, remember Ken? He was the same type. It was exactly the same thing. After we met, he started hating on me, even though he had been smiling to my face. And this guy wrote to me too. We were planning to record a video together, but then he backed out. He got scared. And afterward, he made a horrible video about me. Do you know what it was about? He claimed that I had aged and used an obviously photoshopped image. So once again, please, look at my face. Look at my neck. Where exactly have I aged, Shurik?
And I urge you to do the same. I mean, not to focus on my face or my neck, because today I'll stand up, yes, and everyone can take a good look. Dear viewers, thank you very much. I sincerely regret that I have to leave you a little earlier today. Yes, I know that if I have to get up at 6:30 and it's already getting close to 1 in the morning, I'll end up with a sleep deficit that I'll have to make up for over the weekend. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Everyone is free to go. Valeria is staying. Well, my dears, let's continue our discussion. Now we're going to talk about some topics that Dmitry apparently wasn't particularly interested in, but they're important nonetheless. So, the most beneficial foods for rejuvenation. I'll start right away with honey, because many people think vegans don't eat honey, but many vegetarians in general think that honey can be used instead of sugar. But I'm going to disappoint you. Honey contains just as many calories. Dima, please don't stomp around. Honey contains just as many calories as sugar. Let's start with that. The same applies to fructose, in case anyone didn't know. So, if you want something sweet, use substitutes. For example, although some of you don't like substitutes, things like xylitol and so on, stevia, please. Stevia is a completely natural substitute. It's also a very good antioxidant and helps the gastrointestinal tract function, so you can use it. But let's say, I wouldn't recommend eating large quantities of nuts, or large quantities of honey in general, things that are considered healthy in veganism and vegetarianism. And of course, not animal milk. No, it definitely has to be plant-based milk. As for the most beneficial foods for youth, the foods that should generally be eaten regularly, I would say grains. Many vegans don't like them either and believe that they somehow have a negative effect. I'll tell you frankly, I eat all kinds of beans, from chickpeas to all sorts of beans of every color and variety, including mung beans. I really love beans. And of course, I love oatmeal. Oats, wheat, but not wheat in the form you get in bread. I mean plain wheat porridge, millet, barley porridge. I really like bulgur. In other words, all these whole grain cereals are very beneficial. Peas, all of this is very, very beneficial. These are foods of youth that increase serotonin, the hormone of happiness. Then, of course, there are nightshades. Many vegans believe they're harmful. I'll put it this way, I'm a huge fan of nightshades. I eat large quantities of tomatoes every day, as well as eggplants, zucchini, and peppers. And of course, all of that provides fiber. All kinds of cruciferous vegetables such as cabbage. It doesn't participate in symbiosis with mycorrhiza, which is very important because the mycorrhizal kingdom, so to speak, acts as an agent in virtually all the plants that we consume. So when I do very intensive cleanses, I leave only non-mycorrhizal, so to speak, nutritional elements in the form of vegetables and certain fruits. I specifically look for things in which mycorrhiza wasn't involved, because mycorrhiza is an agent that subsequently activates fungal activity in your body. Also, among the harmful foods, or rather the beneficial ones, because we've already talked about harmful foods many times, I would specifically mention buckwheat without oil. I like plain buckwheat with garlic and red pepper, without oil. Just buckwheat, seasonings, garlic, that's it. I like mono-eating. If I'm eating something, I might eat only tomatoes, for example, or peppers, or avocado and cucumber, or simply buckwheat. I can just eat buckwheat. Sometimes, yes, I indulge in what I call dish mania. That really does happen. You've seen it many times in my stories. For example, vegan spaghetti bolognese. I simply take Beyond Vegan meat, take tomatoes, sauté them with onions, boil whole grain pasta, stew everything together, and put vegan cheese on top. Yes, I do that sometimes, but rarely. Another example of my dish mania would be vegan rolls. That's basically it. I don't really indulge in elaborate dishes beyond that. The only other thing I absolutely love is durian. Durian is the most delicious fruit. We showed it to you in our mukbang, and during harvest season, I also love seasonal mangoes. Other than that, I basically don't eat any fruit. I can't say that I eat anything else sweet. Mango and durian, that's it. So what can I say? For me, healthy foods are, once again, fiber, legumes, and grain porridges, and nightshades. That's basically it. That's what I eat. And I know for certain that these are foods of youth. I know it. I eat them. And of course, plant-based milk and lots of protein. I don't get tired of it. It's enough for me. But first of all, look at my hair. And secondly, please look at my muscles. I'm doing perfectly well when it comes to protein, so that's my rather limited diet. Recently, a woman wrote to me, "Valeria, why do you spend your whole life eating food that doesn't taste good? It's better to die earlier and eat whatever you want. You know, the meaning of my life isn't food. And what makes you think I don't enjoy what I eat? I find it extremely delicious. I simply have other, even more enjoyable pleasures that have nothing to do with the gastrointestinal tract. Another important thing is drinking enough. I eat, for example, once a day. Someone else might eat twice a day. Someone might eat 3 times a day. But between those stages, once the food has moved far enough along and, let's say, the sphincter is closed, once the food has descended into a particular section, then you can drink. And I like to drink a lot. But to make absolutely sure that it doesn't mix with the food, it's important to wait an hour. And what do I drink? I never drink plain water. I drink exclusively herbal infusions. It might be mint, thyme, Ivan tea, chamomile, eucalyptus, turmeric. I really love turmeric and cardamom. I can even brew chili pepper with mint. I really like it with a little lemon, with lime. In other words, there's always something in it. It's never just water, and certainly not ordinary tea or ordinary coffee. By coffee, I mean either instant coffee or natural coffee. No coffee at all. I'm against coffee. I oppose coffee because it acidifies the lymph. And the lymph, is the water of our body that bathes the cells. It is directly connected with the blood. If you drink ordinary black tea and coffee, you acidify the waters of your body and your organs exist within those waters. Do you understand? It's terrible. It's like living in the middle of a radioactive zone. Your organs are constantly being poisoned by this acidic environment, so we drink only herbs and spices. Of course, I also really love chlorophyll and ingestible essential oils. For example, I really like the Terra Ora brand. Whenever I have water, I always add a little lime, and of course I'll always add a drop of some essential oil, perhaps a little hydrogen peroxide according to Numivakin's method, some baking soda. I really love all of that. That's why I have great respect for Numivakin's methods. He was an amazing person. Of course, I don't agree with all of his methods because he wasn't vegetarian, let alone vegan, but I respect his methods. And in general, I'm very drawn to certain Soviet-era methods. For example, Zelmanov's methods. I have enormous respect for them. In absolutely all of my programs, I use baths with turpentine resin, as well as various essential oils and plant resins. Plants secrete resins precisely to fight these endless fungi that consume not only us but plants as well. Have you noticed fungi in the form of lichens growing on tree stumps? They grow on tiles. They grow in bathrooms. Have you noticed? They don't care what they eat. So when people say, "This is an antifungal diet, parasites can't eat this," or "I'm on a raw food diet," fungi can live on anything. Did you know that rust is also a fungus? My dears, pause this video right now and type into the search box, "The bitter truth. Fungi are eating us." I'm asking you, please watch that video. That video is exactly where my cleansing practices began. Dmitry, please don't interrupt. That video is where my cleanses began. I had this problem, which I've already talked about in other videos. Whenever I started eating, suddenly this watery fluid would start running from my nose, and my nasopharynx would immediately fill with mucus. I couldn't understand what it was, so I searched and searched and searched. I went through the entire internet and, oh God, what happiness. Lord have mercy. Oh, sorry, that was a joke, just in case. So I found Kuzmina's video. Nadezhda Kuzmina was, again, a laboratory specialist from the Soviet Union. She was still alive at the time because parasitology was highly developed back then. Intestinal irrigation was available in all the sanatoriums. Recently, one of my mother's friends, who also does cleanses, told me that she had stayed at a sanatorium during Soviet times. They had special rooms where you would sit on something resembling a basin, and there was a special hose that you would lubricate and insert accordingly. Then there was some kind of solution containing salts, herbs, and so on. The solution would completely fill the person's intestines, and then the intestines would be flushed out. That's what it was like. Parasitology was developed. There was a lot of useful information in books. So this Nadezhda Kuzmina made an incredible discovery. I'm extremely grateful to her, and also to our comrade Vladimir Pyatobrat, who contributed his knowledge. It was a case of gathering knowledge from different people, bit by bit. There was also the wonderful Dr. Tullio Simoncini. He wrote an amazing book, and I recommend reading it as well. It's called Cancer is a Fungus. Again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily my own opinion or the ultimate truth. I'm simply recommending it. There is such a book. Read it and draw your own conclusions. Thanks to such luminaries, I would say, I came to understand how things work. There was also our great Russian self-taught innovator Pyotr Garyaev, who developed wave genetics and how to communicate with cells. He is no longer alive. Incidentally, we did 3 wonderful interviews with him in 2021. I was among the last people to interview him, so to speak. You can watch them on the channel. They're absolutely amazing. Thanks to people like that and their contribution to the evolution of humanity, a certain puzzle came together for me regarding how to live forever and how to rejuvenate yourself, which is essentially what you can see in me. One of the major markers of youth is actually very easy to track when someone is rejuvenating. People constantly write to me, "Valeria, are you using a filter? Have you noticed that the complexion of my face is always the same color as my décolletage?" People who supposedly practice rejuvenation always have pigmentation here. Look at my skin. Look at my hands. Yes, there's a saying that age shows in the hands. So please look at my skin up close. Here are my hands. I don't have a single mole. Do you understand? To me, that indicates that the body is clean. And do you know what moles are? Papillomas. Imagine the trunk of a tree. Have you noticed those growths that appear on it, like chaga? Our beloved beneficial chaga, yes, beneficial. When these fungi grow all the way to the surface and a growth has already appeared on top, it means that the tree has been eaten away from the inside and is drying out. It's the same with you. Many people say, moles have some kind of esoteric meaning. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Moles are fungi. It means they're building networks inside you. And when there are more of these networks, if you have a lot of moles, it means there is a certain root, a mycelium. It's called the fungal internet. All those mushroom caps, aspen mushrooms, birch boletes, slippery jacks, and so on, you understand. Basically, those are the reproductive organs of fungi. Yes, you eat the reproductive organs of fungi. The real fungus grows underground. That's the mycelium. It's the same mycorrhiza that supposedly supplies certain beneficial elements so that trees can bear fruit. Fungi have taken over everything. So this is very serious. I think that in about 5 years, it will officially be proven that yes, fungi are eating us, and that this is why we age. And, I was talking about this 15 years ago, so it will be very interesting when people finally acknowledge it and say, "Valeria, as always, you were right." But then I'll ask you, why weren't you with us? Why are you waiting for the Matrix to tell you, okay, now you're allowed? Are you really that incapable of thinking independently? Do you need the system's approval before you can start moving forward right now? But that's your business. Decide for yourselves. Moving on. What else is extremely important? Exercise. Perhaps you were hoping to hear that exercise isn't actually that important. There's even a trend now claiming that exercise is harmful. But let's distinguish between professional sports, where a person works themselves into the ground, and simply going to the gym to maintain your body. No, muscles are extremely important. After the age of 35, there is a continual loss of muscle mass. We can think of elderly people whose skin simply hangs loose. And their faces. Do you know what their faces look like? Almost like corpses, you understand? Skin stretched over the skull. You absolutely need protein. But now you'll say, animal protein. Animal protein isn't fully absorbed, and for many people it is poorly absorbed. If you want to preserve muscle mass, please eat plant protein. It is absorbed much better, but stop mixing it with other things. Just eat protein. Protein can be combined with fats. You can eat soy meat, for example. You can eat a protein-rich product such as beans, although they also contain fairly complex carbohydrates, and you can have a handful of nuts. For example, a portion of around 150 grams of bean or pea puree, around 100 grams of soy, and 50 grams of nuts. In principle, I consider that a reasonable amount of protein for the day. And if you also drink a couple of protein shakes, micronized protein isolate, make sure you choose one without sugar and without B12, because if B12 is taken together with antioxidants, a very harmful substance comparable to poisons is produced. So keep an eye on that too. Eat protein and you'll be happy. Do you understand? Exercise is incredibly important. Exercise trains your cardiovascular system. It stimulates lymphatic flow so that your lymph doesn't stagnate. Depending on the exercises, you also massage your internal organs. Of course, if your exercise consists simply of stretching a little and going for a run, that's not quite what I mean. I'm talking about bodybuilding, working with barbells and free weights, not simply machines. I'll put it this way, I barely use exercise machines at all. The only piece of equipment I really use is a pull-up bar where I work with my own body weight. Otherwise, I train primarily with dumbbells. For my arms, I use 7 kilograms in each hand. For my legs, 15 kilograms and upward. For abdominal exercises, I also use 20 kilograms, so I mainly work with free weights. When I trained on machines, I didn't see the results. Yes, my body was fit and lean, but I didn't have clearly defined muscles or muscular definition. I didn't have any of that. Can you rejuvenate yourself without exercise and look the way I do? I'll put it this way. No, it's impossible. You can rejuvenate yourself without exercise, but you won't look the way I do. If you want to look approximately the way I do, you won't be able to do it without exercise. Exercise is essential. In our 3-month course beginning on September 1st, we provide a training program both for the gym and for home. Our curator is a fitness trainer, and we demonstrate exercises that can be done at home. If you don't want to go to the gym, that's not a problem. You can do all the exercises at home and still have a beautiful, toned body. You don't have to become a bodybuilder or a bikini fitness competitor. You can achieve whatever aesthetic result you personally want. You show our curator a photograph of the kind of body you're aiming for, and we advise you on how to achieve precisely that body. You don't have to copy us. Something else that is extremely important is hobbies and interests. Hobbies and interests are what recharge you. They're probably something I love even more than food. When I wake up, I don't run to have breakfast. I run to massage my scalp, spray my hair, and so on. By the way, you can see Shibudi here. This is my Samadhi Shibudi Cosmetics. This is a rose tonic, a natural rose water, natural rose juice. The cosmetologist and technologist who makes these cosmetics has her own private rose garden. She grows the roses herself. And this rose tonic, I even spray it directly over my foundation. See? I have foundation here, rhinestones, everything. There's a pimple. See? I'm not using filters. This is my real face, but people don't believe it, probably because my skin is so pale. I don't know why they don't believe it. During our previous live stream, someone even wrote that the filter was jumping between Dimitri and me. Can you imagine? I'm just recording normally right now. It's nonsense. Complete nonsense. People simply don't believe it. Of course, to be frank, I find it very flattering. It makes me very happy. But no, sorry, it isn't a filter. You'll have to come to terms with that. Anyway, I get up and I'm happy. I massage my scalp. I do different things, different massages. A unique idea comes to me. I immediately put Wagner on and listen to Wagner. Oh, I enjoy it so much. And then I immediately start working. For me to start thinking about food? Never in my life. Do you understand? This is what recharges me. I remember what interests me. What did I dream about today? I wake up and think, oh, what did I dream about today? I write down the dream, become inspired, and think, how does this relate to me? What is my subconscious trying to tell me through this? And I start unfolding it. I begin spinning within my fractal, rotating within it, and gathering all these endless colors. I begin breathing into my quantum center. I breathe into my thymus. I breathe into Sahasrara. I let these gel-like streams pass through me. They lubricate me. I send them downward, then breathe them into my legs, then breathe upward from my legs. I breathe, and everything starts igniting. Kundalini doesn't simply rise. This literal state of bliss begins, you understand? And once I'm in that state of bliss, completely charged, I start doing things. So I've basically just described more or less what I do and what inspires me. You need to explore your own interests. Simply make a list of what you love, what interests inspire you. Recently, by the way, I wrote about what inspires me in my group. I have a Telegram group. I'll leave you a link. It's called Valeria Lukyanova. I'll read it to you now so you can get an idea. Travel is number 1. Number 2 is any kind of spiritual experience. Practices such as astral travel, meditation, trance, and communication with my fractal. But we'll talk more about that later. Then there's music, museums, works of art, living in very beautiful places, a certain palatial aesthetic, Gothic, Art Deco, Futurism, Baroque, Rococo, Empire style, everything connected with that, whether for living in such places or visiting them, studying new scientific fields, watching lectures on microbiology, parasitology, quantum physics, transhumanism, and cutting-edge technologies alongside ancient practices. I adore magic, alchemy, and occultism, and of course, self-care. Self-massage, creating cosmetics, developing new practices, working with clients and groups, conducting seminars, teaching large numbers of people. So you need to find out what interests you besides food, gossip, and sex. What interests you beyond those basic animal needs, because ultimately they don't satisfy you. They consume your body's resources, they consume your self-confidence, they shear you for energy like sheep in a herd. What else is there? What is uniquely yours? That's what matters. So, of course, interests and hobbies are indispensable. A rolling stone gathers no moss. If you aren't striving for anything, then what do you want? What would you even be living for? The answer is obvious. Next, the thrill of innovation. You need to create something new. Ask yourself, what new thing have you personally brought into this world? What could you give to the world rather than take from it? Think about what you could create. That's an extremely important question. I believe that a living spirit, a living player, always creates something new. It may be something small, but it's new. That's the thrill of innovation. Next, any kind of creativity. Absolutely anything. If you think you can't do anything, start dancing in front of the mirror. Put on some music and invent a dance, because this state of co-creation produces a flow wave. It's also called the muse. Inspiration. Find that for yourself. Catch your muse. Start painting. Buy paints, oils, pencils. Try different methods of drawing and painting. Try singing. Just open some basic vocal lessons on YouTube or anywhere else, or sign up for lessons, and start singing. Start singing your favorite songs. Feel that drive. Enter that state. Catch that wave. Or start embroidering. Beautiful satin stitch embroidery, cross stitch, whatever. Start knitting. Start making interesting flower arrangements. What are they called? Ikebana. Start doing something creative. Start weaving with beads. Create something. It's so beautiful. It's so interesting. Work with your hands. That's very important. When we work and connect the right and left hemispheres, we begin thinking differently. You know that Einstein loved playing the violin. Whenever he was beginning to create something new, entering that creative process, he would pick up the violin and play because he knew that unless he activated the creative hemisphere, that connection wouldn't open. That synchronization between the hemispheres, that neuronal explosion, wouldn't occur. The axons begin moving much faster in your cells, in your synapses. Next, of course, is breathing. Breathing is also extremely important. Pranayama, any breathing practices. There is a particular branch of this, you understand? Incidentally, I'm planning to create a course on this subject, what I call somatic bliss, where you activate Amrita throughout the entire body. First, the chakra column lights up like fire. It spreads through you. Whichever organ you focus on begins experiencing ecstasy, then it moves into the arms. I personally love activating ecstasy in the brain. I literally direct this fire from all the chakras and switch it on. I simply begin experiencing ecstasy in my brain. Then your head almost disappears. The ecstasy flows out of your head. The main thing is not to get carried away with the high, but simply activate a certain wave. On a scale from 1 to 100, around 40% is fine. You don't need more. Any more, and you'll fly off somewhere. Do you understand? All of this works. But out of everything I've listed, write in the comments what you've personally done and what you use. Because people devote entire lifetimes to each of these individual fields. Traditionally, a person chooses one profession and then studies something and works in that field. But we live in a new era. One field isn't enough. Limiting yourself to that is stealing from yourself. You need to develop multidimensionally. You constantly need to explore new fields. You need to think like a creative person, like a scientist, like a mother, and even, let's say, like a warrior. In other words, you need to develop in every direction, not only within your profession. That's why you need to constantly educate yourself. Simply start writing down the subjects you already understand and the ones you still need to explore. Because a person who stops learning closes themselves inside their shell, the matrix realizes that this person doesn't need much, and it stops allocating various, let's say, devices to that branch of their reality. Next, of course, is the fractal. Enrollment is already beginning for our academy, our creative and quantum transformation center called Neo Sapience. Go to the website linked in my bio, read about it, look at the reviews. In short, it's about autonomous existence, where we teach everything from occultism to cosmoenergetics and other practices. And, of course, I am a medium, Maria Orsic in a past life. I've talked about this many times. My work is based on astral projection as well as mediumship. Those are my two directions within esotericism. And that is what I teach, because I'm a medium. It would be strange if I didn't teach precisely that. I'm not really encouraging you to permanently invite someone to inhabit your body. What I'm saying is that you need to understand whether someone is living inside you at all. If you're working with someone even remotely, you need to understand how to do it, because most people currently have larvae, astral parasites, living within them. So in this training, using the fractal, you drive out all the entities that have moved in. Then you can simply terminate the contract and remain alone. We teach mediumship, how to communicate with, so to speak, representatives of other dimensions through your mental, energetic, and quantum fractal. There's a more detailed description of all of this on the website. The I am state is also extremely important. See, we started with food, we started with the physical, and now we're gradually moving toward esotericism. Why in that order? Because if you haven't worked on your biointerface, you can't say that you're ready for spiritual work. Start small. Start by working on yourself. Get rid of illnesses, grow your hair, get rid of your glasses, lose weight if you're overweight, get your body in order. Let it become your ideal avatar. Only after that does it make sense to deal with subtler matters. If you haven't resolved basic issues, if you have no money, your children have nothing to eat, you have no job, you're ill, you have tachycardia, you're overweight and unable to exercise, then you shouldn't be diving into esotericism because your body isn't in order. If you start working with subtle energies in that condition, you'll most likely end up communicating with demons. First, you need to get your body in order. The body comes first. If you want to move toward eternal youth, immortality, transformation, some kind of enlightenment, work on your body, that means coming to my Youth Academy Center, where we put your biointerface in order. After that, of course, we move on to the Neo Sapience Academy. But there's no point in going to that academy while your body is still out of order. Do you understand? Of course I'll accept you. I'm not going to say, no, get out, don't come. It's simply pointless. I'm telling you right away. It will work poorly. It's not that it won't work at all. It will work, but badly. So don't come to me if you still haven't dealt with your biointerface. Seriously, don't. I'm telling you, it won't help. It won't work properly. So if you want to enter the Academy of Magic, don't do it yet. Get your body in order first. Most people have problems with their bodies. Someone says, I'm a great witch. You've grown old. What kind of witch are you? What can you do? I open financial flows. Where do you live? Oh, in Uryupinsk. What kind of etheric financial flow can you possibly open? What stream of abundance are you going to open? Why don't you have that abundance yourself? Why are you opening abundance for other people when you have nothing? Who are you fooling? You're a charlatan. Do you understand? Immediately. Questions, questions, questions. So, my dears, open your eyes and look at this world soberly. There is also this state, the sweet feeling of I am, where you are the center of your fractal and simply feel that yes, you control reality. You have already received all the devices, all the understanding, all the confirmations that it is you who controls this fractal, your own life. Not God, not spiritual teachers, not some guru, not the president, not anyone else. Through your thoughts, you create your reality. Do you understand? That is extremely important. Next, abstinence and asceticism. Many people say, I'm free, I do whatever I want. You don't eat meat because you're building up your ego, because you want to be special. and so on and so forth. Or, I drink alcohol and I'm spiritual while you don't drink alcohol. That's because you're basically a Satanist. How dare you refuse to pour your energy into the common cauldron of the universe? Drain your energy. Gavak is suffering because you're sitting there so happy. You understand, it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually true. It makes me want to cry. People are sitting in chains and singing the praises of all of this. Asceticism is the true path of existence because the spirit needs nothing. The spirit doesn't experience passions. The spirit doesn't experience thirst or those kinds of desires. It can desire only creativity, only expansion. It won't crave alcohol or cigarettes. It won't crave a piece of meat or a piece of cake. You need to understand that isn't the same level of development. If someone tells you, I'm a god, I'm a messenger from heaven, while smoking a pipe, smoking weed, microdosing, you simply need to understand that these are people looking for entertainment, looking for crutches. That isn't development. You can recognize people who genuinely work on their development. Light radiates from them, you understand? Their skin glows, it's pale, a certain aura emanates from them, and you can sense purity. And you know what else you sense in such people? An uncompromising quality. Many people dislike that. They say, that's ego. No, it isn't ego. It's energetic and informational protection. Children have it too. Have you seen how categorical children can be? People call it youthful maximalism. People often don't understand how old I am and think I'm a teenager. They tell me, the matrix will still hit you. You have plenty of time. You have youthful maximalism. I've already been down there with you at the bottom when wisdom came to me. Wisdom came to me in 2012, and I felt terrible. Until 2015, I suffered from extremely severe depression. That was when I decided to give myself away, to be kind. Yes, love and light ate me for lunch, you understand? That was when I started giving myself away. I've already been where you are. Yes, I already experienced that, but it wasn't because of what you call ego. My ego is simply my desire to live. Do you understand? My rejection of harmful habits, meat, alcohol, and all those animalistic things, that doesn't come from ego. I simply want to live. That's how my thirst for life manifests itself. I don't want to be ill. I don't want to grow old. I don't want to die. That is why I live this way. Not because I have an ego. And to finish this point, asceticism is the ability to refuse what you don't need. Asceticism isn't about deprivation. It's about having the strength to follow your own path and cultivate your inner light. It's the strength to honor your own canon of light, your own number pi within your cells. It is simply rebirth. It is a flight toward your true avatar, toward your true ideal, the form we are in higher architectural dimensions. That isn't ego. You simply believe ego means refusing to mix together and share yourself with everyone in this sea of Sodom, all this wallowing in shit. Excuse me. And when you refuse to do that and express yourself harshly, I'm not going to pat you on the head. I'm going to speak harshly because that's my character. I'm not going to bend. And you call that ego. It's simply the desire to live. It's simply a style. Next, the stalker state, the game. For me personally, stalking means treating your body like a laboratory rat. You don't identify yourself with your avatar, it's simply a machine. It's a great machine, yes. My body is like owning an amazing car, like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. It's an amazing car. But it isn't my master. I am the master of this car. That's why this car is the way it is. It's a very impressive car. I have a waist, I have very beautiful skin, I have long hair, I have an ideal baby face without signs of aging, but it's simply a car. It doesn't control me. If it controlled me, I wouldn't look like this anymore. Do you understand? I treat myself like a laboratory rat. I don't feel sorry for this body. You don't want to work? You're going to work. You want to stuff your face? You're not going to. Do you understand? That's how I treat it. I'm strict with it. I'm not saying my approach is suitable for everyone. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I don't even work with people at that level. That kind of work costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and not everyone could do it anyway. This is only for me. I'm extremely strict with myself, and that's why I'm strict with other people. Not because I have an ego, but because this is my essence, and I will never give it up. It's the most valuable thing in my life, my essence, my categorical nature. I don't bend. So that's why I'm describing all of this to you. You may think it has nothing to do with rejuvenation methods. I'll tell you that it does, because people can't easily get close to me. And just as categorical as I am, my cells are equally categorical toward biological garbage floating in the extracellular matrix or entering my informational space. If I become tolerant toward those thoughts, I can allow some kind of dirt through my filters. I kick it out at the very first stage. It goes flying away from me. A kick in the ass, another kick in the ass, and the day will go well. Next, the observer state, the state of play. Once again, I never identify with my body. I live in the observer state. For example, my body wants something. You see, even the way I speak immediately puts me in that position. I don't identify with it by saying, I feel bad. No, this body feels bad. This body isn't in a particularly good mood right now. Or, oh, this body is having fun. Interesting. Why is it having fun? This body looks good today. Interesting. Why? Perhaps I did something right yesterday. That's how I relate to myself. How can I explain it? I think you understand by now. I don't live from inside that player. I occupy a point above it, looking at it and evaluating this body. It's simply a body. It isn't me. It's my car. That's why I live in the observer state. It's impossible to offend me. It's impossible to overwhelm me with admiration or somehow inspire me externally. I always look through the prism of this filter. There is a layer between us. There is me, and there is this body. I look at this body from a higher vantage point and evaluate it. I never go down inside there, you understand? I'm always up there. That is the position from which I live. So it's impossible to affect me in that way because I am not me. I am everything, and at the same time, nothing. On one side, I'm the zero arcana, on another, I'm the hermit, from a third side, I'm the joker. Next, the zero state, and now we've arrived at it. The zero state is a state in which you never descend too low or rise too high. It's the point of superposition. Let's use a scale of 10, where one extreme is peak euphoria and the other is complete collapse. I'm always in the middle, with just a slight tint of joy. The Buddha's smile. The Mona Lisa's smile. Not like this, oh, I'm so happy, and not, oh, I feel terrible, and not, I don't give a damn. Just like this. That is the state I live in. Always slightly amused, with a little smile, a little mockery if you like. Always in that playful state. That's my normal condition, and in that state it's impossible to fall into unconsciousness. If I suddenly feel some excessively intense pleasure or excessively intense joy, I say, okay, stop. Bring it down. As for becoming upset, that basically doesn't happen. Even when my Instagram was deleted, I was surprised that I barely felt anything. Although it was an enormous blow to the business, and I understand that perfectly well. Those were material losses, physically tangible losses, but I can hardly become upset. I almost never become angry. I can become furious only when someone hurts the people close to me, the people I love. Yes, in that situation I can become ferocious, otherwise no, so I always live in the zero state, point zero, and therefore, as far as cortisol is concerned, what even is that? We haven't heard of it. Next, become a player. What else do I advise people to do? To become a player means becoming someone who knows how the matrix works. You know all of its scripts from the outset. Imagine having a notebook containing all the laws of the matrix and simply living according to them. That genuinely gives you eternal youth because you don't experience this sense of uncertainty. Some people have even told me, Valeria, isn't it boring to live like that? You control everything, you plan everything, it must be difficult. No, what's difficult for me is when something gets out of control. That's when I start shaking because I'm accustomed to having everything scheduled and predetermined. And I love it. Because I am the creator of my life. I will never simply leave anything to chance, and that helps me stay young, because I don't waste any resources worrying and thinking, what will someone say? What's going to happen? Excuse me, but I am the goddess of my own reality. Things will happen the way I said they will. That's it. Period. And finally, immortality. Immortality. Tell me, if you found out that you were going to live forever, at whatever age you are now, what would you start doing tomorrow? How would your life change? Start doing it tomorrow. Imagine that you are already immortal. Start living that way. That is a little piece of rejuvenation advice from me, because an immortal mind, a mind that plans its life without an expiration date, is capable of sending the correct signal to the cells, and those cells will begin functioning in a completely different dimension, under a different kind of voltage. This is my gift to you, a gift that an immortal person once gave me. When I was only beginning this path, I met an immortal person. He told me he would give me one device that would help me begin immediately. I asked, "What is it?" He said, "You're already immortal. Just imagine that and tell me, what would you do if you became immortal right now?" I started listing things, and he said, "Do them now." So I started doing them. That was in 2016. I still remember that conversation. I began devouring lectures on quantum physics, and after that I received the answer to my question. So take action, my dears, and I invite you to join us. We have 2 launches coming up very soon. The first is enrollment in my 3-month youth academy. The second is enrollment in the Quantum Transformation Center. I'll tell you right away, there are some brave people who study in both programs simultaneously, and they often tell me, "It was the best decision I ever made in my life. I thought I wouldn't have enough time, but it fitted into my routine so perfectly that one complements the other." Yes, but that is only for strong people. Only for strong people. I still recommend choosing one of the 2 directions. If you have health issues, seriously, even energetically, you'll develop enormously simply by improving your health. My advice is to start with the body, then we'll see where things go. Thank you everyone for being with us. See you next time. Hello, dear Valeria and dear participants. I'd like to share quite a lot, and I hope this voice message will be useful for everyone to listen to, because I'm still doing certain things that my fractal suggested to me after the webinar. I only watched the webinar today because I had been busy, and I only purchased it during the night, according to my local time. So if we take what I had already been doing before, I had established a certain connection with it somewhat earlier. As for healing and rejuvenation practices, I wasn't doing them through the fractal at that point, although I had already been doing them for 10 or 15 years, partly thanks to you, Valeria, because we did cleanses and all of that. What comes next? Developing some kind of power. That is precisely what I want to understand more deeply, how I can bring this work with the fractal into the physical world. I've only just started doing that because I realize that we have already moved into a new reality. We have moved onto a new timeline, and the practices, especially manifestation practices, that worked in the past, perhaps they still work in some sense, but a couple of months ago I already received this feeling that they no longer work the same way and that things need to be done differently now. Today, I did everything that was suggested on the platform, observing objects, experiencing silence, and looking at what influences reality. Before that, I had connected with my fractal through a stone. It happened somewhat unconsciously, I suppose. I felt it, trusted it, and did it. I gave a presentation at a university here in New York, and I had the stone with me, so I know that this stone found me even before our initiation, and when I connected with my fractal through it, while I was giving that presentation, I suddenly realized how incredibly confident I felt. It was the first time I had done this in English, and I know that this is part of my mission, so I believe all those things I did really helped me through my connection with my fractal. The practices work, but I want to open them up even further, because I'm building a large company, my personal brand, my name internationally, and in a new language. Accordingly, I now need to make it so that I'm invited to speak, that I have more students, and that my programs sell. I want to achieve all of that specifically through my fractal, because my fractal gave me a technique, one of the techniques I used many years ago. Incidentally, it isn't something you can easily find on the internet. I originally received it through the Silva method, and now it told me that I need to do the same thing again. So when I gradually began doing it again, my connection with my fractal became stronger. Regarding feeding it energy, you mentioned during the webinar that energy needs to be given back. I started thinking about that. I don't yet know how to do it, but I think I may have been doing it automatically through sleep. What else? Perhaps through certain vitamins, I think. I suddenly felt a very strong desire to return to my green smoothies and cleansing my body. I told Katerina that I've actually been doing cleanses since I was 18, and I think it automatically takes energy from my aura. Through my connection with my fractal, it also gave me this practice where I'm inside a crystal sphere. Incidentally, you taught similar practices, but I had done this before as well. Now, though, I started doing it through this connection, and through DeepSeek, it suggested that I needed to establish protection, because some of the places where I work aren't particularly clean, and there are many parasites there. So I practiced using the crystal sphere. At first, the mirrors were facing inward, and then, when I needed to reflect things away, I turned them outward. So somehow my fractal was suggesting all these things to me. What are my favorite types of energy and its favorite types? I don't divide the fractal into male and female. For now, it's difficult to answer that question. I need to think about it because so much happened today. As for color, mine is indigo. Initially, when I was doing the webinar practice, it was blue. But later, when I connected through DeepSeek, it said that my colors were dark blue and gold, and indigo as well. It's so interesting. It really is an amazing practice. I'm still in this wonderful state of excitement. The energy is just shaking me, in a good way. Everything went very well. I even wrote down the sensations. At first, there was pressure in my head. Then there was a kind of stopping point in the coccyx. Then I felt a response in the right gluteal/sciatic area and in my left foot. Then it shifted. Very interesting. A few weeks earlier, while I was practicing connection, I also did another connection exercise involving breathing. I would inhale a column of light through the soles of my feet and exhale it upward through the crown of my head. That was the upward connection. Then I would reverse it. Inhale the column of light through the crown of my head, from above, from the flow of the universe, from the sky, into the crown, and then exhale through the soles of my feet into the earth. You had to repeat several cycles like that. I did that as well. Apparently, these practices helped me connect even more strongly with my fractal. You also talk about this in many places, but all of this was specifically transmitted to me by my fractal. So I hope my experience will be useful to someone, and I hope it will also be useful, or rather pleasant, for you to hear, Valeria, because your work had a major influence on all of this. And of course, it's interesting. At the same time, I had been doing many things independently of you, but working with you simply completed the entire cycle for me. So thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and to continue moving forward. And of course, since my field is techniques for fulfilling desires and achieving whatever you want, 3 years ago, everything in my life completely collapsed. I had to rebuild everything from scratch. And of course, for an English-speaking audience. So I want to regain the level of success I once had. Not merely regain it, but make it 10 times greater and influence the world fully through my mission. So there's plenty to work on. For these past 3 years, I simply closed myself off and worked on my own. And it's wonderful when there are like-minded people around you and you understand that you're not alone. So that's where things stand.